Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to work on doing the railing that's going to go across the whole top half of this. And for our spindles, we're going to be using some copper twisted wire. And we're going to cut it to fit in between two of these little boards. I believe these were 1/4 of an inch. The tags are already taken off of them, so I can't really tell you accurately, but they are just little square dowels. And I purchased them at Home Depot. Alright, so we'll have the little spindles. There's a tutorial on how to do this if you want to do it. Okay, so the very first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get yourself a piece of scrap wood, a smaller piece of scrap wood, and some very small nails.
Yeah, what I did was the spacing between the railings, between the up and down pieces, I put 2 nails in, drilled 3 holes. When the purpose of the 3rd hole is so you can get started evenly. You'll always have a perfect spacing. Put those nails, whatever the spacing is, where the 3rd hole was, that's where your drill bit's going to go for the next piece. Now, hold this. You take it off and you use this hole for the next one.
Okay, so you can see that the holes are gone right pretty much in order, same spacing. If they look like they're a little bit off, it's because the wood is not exactly the same size all the way down. It's pretty close, but not 100% accurate. It's the way that the lumber is cut. And if you don't have a drill press, you could do the same thing using a regular drill if you're just careful and making your template or your jig. Okay, so now that you have all your holes drilled, the next step is going to be to drill a hole inside each end of the length piece. That's going to be the railing.
Just far enough to put a little stud in there. Toothpick in there to stabilize it until the glue dries. After you twist your wire, you want to make them all the same length. These are 2.5 inches. And if you have a pair of wire snips, you can use those to cut it with. But to cut them all the same length, I made a little jig here. This is a glue block on one end. It's 2 7/16. It's a 1/16 of an inch shorter than the wire, because when the snips go up against it, the edge don't go right to the edge of it, so it's about a 1/16 of an inch. You'd have to judge it for your own self as to what your snips are. To make it easy, I'm going to tape this down. Just use a couple pieces for right now, but it should have a few more of them so it don't move around on you. Now we're going to take this and run it right up to the block, put the snips against the wood, and cut it. And they'll all come out the same. And as you can see, they're all pretty much the same there. push them up against the block here, you'll see it. That are all the same, and these are the ones that we did already. And they're all just about what we need. And that's all there's to it. All you gotta do is do it.
Okay, so after you do that, the next step would be to make sure you have all of your holes drilled, and we went all the way through when we did the holes. Okay, so now you're going to lay them out and make sure you have the right amount spacing. Typically these are 8 feet in between on a regular house. But to get the spacing from the left to the right to work out, we didn't do ours 8 feet. Okay, also when you're doing them, you want to make sure when you cut them that the holes all line up and everything, and you keep your sets together. Alright, we're going to finish cutting the rest of them to finish up that side, and we'll be back. Alright, the next step after you have the ends drilled with the hole in it is to start adding your spindles. Continue this process until all the spindles have been inserted in one end. Alright, so once all the spindles have been inserted in the one end, you are going to fit them in to the top, one by one, all the way down. Okay, so I've worked them in there. Now I just need to flatten them down just slightly until they're all even. You should end up with a rail like this. Make sure they're all straight and you're level. Sometimes they may start to bend on you as you're pushing them in there, or they may come out too far. So you just want to kind of pull it back a little bit to get that back there. And then measure to make sure you have it in all the way. Like right here, they're not down in there all the way. Just want to tap it down. Okay, so there's what it looks like. Now the ends up here, these are actually going to be where we're going to put some toothpicks, or you could use some wooden dowels, but if you break the toothpick off, it's going to fit in there pretty good. Okay, and then we'll be right back with the next step.
We needed 12 posts for the fence to go around the dollhouse. So I took 3/8 square and I put a saw curve on all 4 sides to make the top a little decorative. And then after I had all 12 of them cut, I put them on the table saw and raised the saw so it doesn't cut all the way through it, and put a saw curve in it. Then I took them and turned them over to the other side like that. Did each one of them and then put them all on the saw curve on the other side, and I did that on all 4 sides. Now I take it over to the sander and I do this bevel on the top, and I made a little jig on the sander so I can just set it in up to this point, and it will only sand that much of it. Alright, so I took a scrap piece of wood. This is cut on a 45, and I nailed it to it. Then I clamped it to the sander. Put a nail at the depth that I want to sand off. Slide it down to that point. That's all it takes. When you hit the nail, you stop. and it does a real nice job.
Okay, so these are going to be the banisters that's going to go in between the railing. And then these are all the spindles. Turns out we needed 140 spindles, which was 29 1/16 feet. So it's a lot of spindles you're going to have to cut. So you're going to need a whole pack of wire at least 30 feet long in order to do that. Okay. This was 18 gauge with 2-strand wire. If you're not getting 2-stranded wire, you're going to need double that in order to do it. Okay. Now the spindles are made out of the copper wire, and the posts are going to be made out of these little wooden square dowels.
3/8.
It's a 3/8 inch, and we showed you how we cut this little part in here, and then we showed you how we sanded it. If you don't have a way of doing the electric sander, you can always sand that by hand, and for this part here, you could always just take your miter box saw and go through it, and then just turn it that way.
For the top and bottom rail, my distance is 5 1/8 of an inch, so I don't want to leave the hole, wind up with part of a hole on there. So I got the ruler, and 5 1/8 is right here. So I use that spacing to make these spindles come out even, so they don't wind up with a half a spindle. It's 5 1/8. I put a mark there, bring it over to the miter saw, set it in the miter saw, and I'm going to cut right on the line. So when you do your top and bottom rails, you want to make sure that the spindles are straight up and down. So both of these ends, the holes have to be in parallel with each other, coming all the way down at the end. So we'll come down here and mark it and cut it. Right. But I find it easier to put it in the miter saw and move it up. We'll do it from, turn this around so it'll make it easier to see. Put it this way. Put the saw in there. And I just move this up till it touches the saw, and then I know they're even. Okay? And I know they're exactly even. And I'll cut them in half. And when you put your wires in there, the wires will be even. So it'll hold it, and you can see how the ends are even. The holes go all the way through, and they line up. So there you
go, so you can see they go right through.
Right. Not to find a hole.
Okay, so if you have a sticker that's still on there and it's on your wood, you can take some acetone and you can rub it and it'll come right off with acetone. Okay, you can get acetone in your local hardware store, but it's also in nail polish, so you could probably just get, well, not nail polish, but nail polish remover. So you could probably just use that if you can't find it in your local hardware store. As you can see, the sticker is completely gone off of them now. There's another one with it. And then now you'll be able to stain it or sand it.
Now to measure your distance for the bottom rail, I use a piece of 3/8 dowel because I want it up off the ground 3/8 of an inch. And hold that even with the bottom. Take your pencil, put a little mark where your railing is going to start. And you can do the same thing with the top rail because it's 2.5 inches, so you'd come up 2.5 inches. Two and a half inches, and that's the top rail. and you can mark that.
Okay, so if you have all your spindles, you can use a square, if you have a small square, to line them up that way and do them all at the same time. That one moved. Make sure you have them even so that your lines aren't crooked.
And we've got them all marked. What I want to do is mark down 1/8 of an inch from the top and 1/8 of an inch from the bottom line. And that's going to be where we're going to put the toothpick to go through to join all these railings together. All right, now I'm going to drill the holes to put the little stud in that goes for the top and bottom rail. To save time, what I do is just made a little jig, put a block of wood there so I get them all in the same place, and then I'll drill it. You want to center it on the line with the drill and center it this way. I guess we can go all the way through with it because we got to do two sides. All except for the corner post. And I'll take the other corner post. Just take your time, because we're not in any hurry. Now the corner post, you got to go both directions. Do that direction and then flip it over and do the other direction. And this is the corner post.
Okay, now the corner you did on both sides because when it's standing up at the corner, you're going to have banisters going from each side of it. The rest of them are only going to have the single side. Okay, now you're going to continue this process and do the same thing at the bottom for the height of your railing, which is going to be right where we put this little mark. And then once you have all your holes drilled, then we can put the railings together and paint them. So to make sure that it's going to match into your post, what we did is we have our holes drilled on each of the posts and that. Move this cord out the way for you. Okay, we took a toothpick and we put it through there. We test fitted each one to make sure that it was going to fit. If it did not fit, then we took that distance and we tapped it down again. And then where it needed to, like the posts were a little bit longer because they weren't cut accurately in the beginning, we'll sand that off with the sander and it'll sand off no problem. All right, you can cut it off or you can use a file, a metal file to file it off. Okay, once you have all your rails cut and you've got them all sanded on the bottom and everything and they're all ready to install, you're going to need to cut yourself 3/4 of an inch of a toothpick. And then that's going to get inserted inside of here. Alright? You want to put a little bit of glue on it before you put it in there, but that's basically where it's going to go. Okay, so when I was doing the post with the glue, I wanted to tell you a little trick that I did is, and I can't really show you on the Dollhouse, but basically this is 1/8 of an inch, and that's about how far I want it out. So I took this and I tapped it down in here, okay? I have to do it off of the Dollhouse because it's just not strong enough to hold it. Okay, so right there it's stopped. All right, so if you take it and you put it on the piece of wood and you tap it, it'll stop as soon as it's 1/8 of an inch thick because it has nowhere else to go. So that'll help you keep the accuracy a little bit more accurate. And then on the other side of it, if it's too long, then you can cut a tiny bit of it off of there, and then that'll give you an accurate size. Now remember, these aren't for support or anything. These are just to go inside of here and hold it until the glue dries and sets. Okay, so when you're doing the corner and you drill it all the way through, you need to put a dowel this way and then a dowel coming out on this side, and then you need to fill in the hole here so that you don't see that. So basically you only want them coming out on the corners like this. Alright, so this would be the corner post, so it would go here, and one will come this way and one will go that way, and then that one will obviously face in this way. If you notice the back hole, I just kind of filled in and then did it that way. So once you have all your posts with the little pieces in, the one that goes up against the wall, you're going to cut that off and sand it so that it's flat that way. And then the one that goes on the corner, one will go right, one will go left, or one will go left and one will go right, depending on what corner you're at. So basically, all you're going to do is you're going to line up your holes from here to here, and you're going to put them in there. Now, these do have to be glued, which I haven't glued them. I'm just doing this for the tutorial. And then for this one, you're going to do the same thing. Okay, so that was a little too long, so I had to shorten that up a little bit with a pair of cutters. But basically, you're just going to put it together like that. And then the next one, we'll do the same exact thing. And then you'll continue this process all the way down until you're completely all the way around the entire porch. And I'm actually going to put it together with some glue, and then I'll paint it, and we'll be back to show you how we finished it. Okay, so when you're gluing it together, I found that it's a lot easier to lay it flat. That way you can keep these flat against the table. And if they're kind of twisted a little bit, you can straighten them out a little bit with your hand to make them level with the table. Alright, so I'm going to continue to glue these, and then we'll be back. Okay, so this is what it looks like before we paint it and before it's anchored down completely. We'll put some screws up through the bottom underneath of each one of these posts. But basically this is it. And it's going to get painted white. Okay, so this part is optional. If you want to put a piece across the top of it, you can just take a piece of balsa wood, split it down to the thickness of your corner post, and then cut at the length of it, and then it'll go on top.
Unless you could buy 3/8 balsa.
Or you can get 3/8 balsa, which I don't know that they sell that. Okay, so if you want to do the top railing, that's what it looks like with it before it's painted. Okay, and then this is what it looks like without it. And I've got some glue on there. I'm just going to take this piece of balsa wood that we cut, and I'm going to fit it right on top, and I'm going to make it even with both of the ends so that it meets up. Okay, it just kind of resembles a real deck with the top board, that's all. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to do it, but I prefer it that way. And again, we still have to paint it and anchor it all down and everything. Okay, so now you need to prime it before you can paint it, because you have the copper that is in the railing and then the wood. So you can get the paint and primer all in one, or you can prime it and then paint it. I'm going to go ahead and prime it first, and then I'm going to paint it. Only because the copper I want to have a really good coating on it. Just do real light coats. And just continue that process, let it dry, and then do it again, probably 2 more times. And then you can put the clear coat, or you can put a white gloss, which I'm going to use a white gloss. This is the first coat of primer.